Hello and welcome. This is section 2.13, 2.13, writing and solving equations. I'm going to start with an example here, a problem to solve, and we're going to work through building our equation from scratch. I mean, this is the, you can find this problem in the book in this section. This is like the end problem in the book there, but we're going to start from here and kind of build up to it, and you'll see kind of an example of how we build an equation from scratch that we can solve. Now, if the problem is simple enough, we can often do that in our head or kind of figure it out, but the benefit of using an equation as a tool is that we can keep track of what we're going to do and without losing track of what we're doing, and the equation will also tell us what to do in some sense. And so it's often a useful tool to have. I mean, you can do stuff in your head until you can't. So we'll start with this problem right here. And feel free to pause it if you want to figure it out. See if you can figure out the answer yourself by whatever means you want, and then I'll show you my tool. I'll show you how we work up to this. Now, in general, the method I show you will be a lot quicker. I'm explaining all the parts and the ins and outs of things, so it'll be a lot quicker than what you'll see when I talk about it, especially after you practice a lot. Anyway, so the problem here is local bar and grill is having a quarter wing night, during which chicken wings cost a quarter each. All you have with you is $20. You also want to buy a pitcher of your favorite beverage for $5 and some blue cheese dressing for $1.50. If you want to tip 20% and there's a 7% sales tax, how many wings can you buy with your $20? Well, there's a lot of parts and pieces here, so let's just start with what we know. And this is how I attack any problem I come across. I write down what I know and what I want to know. Usually what I want to know, I often start first, and I say, well, the main thing you want to know is, well, how many wings you can buy. So that's usually what I give a variable to, so I'll call that W, and I'll label it number of wings that we can buy. And my goal is to basically connect what I know to what I don't know, to what I want to know, and find an equation. If you can find a way to compute the same thing in two different ways on one hand or the other hand, well, then you have an equation. You just set those two things equal to each other. So what do we know? Well, we know, first of all, we have $20. Wings cost a quarter. Actually, let's just do this. 0.25 cents. Sorry, $0.25 each. What's next? We'll bring in this other stuff in a minute. This is almost all we need right this second if we're just going to kind of start with a basic problem here. But let's write down everything we know here. Beverage is $5. Blue cheese, $1.50. I'll just call it dressing. All right. And then lastly, we've got a tip. A tip of 20%, sales tax 7%. Now you may seem like, oh, I'm just writing down everything that's in the problem anyway. Why am I doing that? Well, one reason to do this is you're writing stuff down for yourself in your own words, so that you don't have to keep referring back to the word problem and try to reparse all the information. If I've written it out for myself, I know I can basically look to what I wrote, and as long as I copied it or wrote it correctly, then I'll be good to go, and it'll be a lot quicker than having to parse these sentences over again. That's just generally how I do it. If you have your own way of doing this stuff, that's fine, and you can oftentimes this part here becomes a lot quicker. You don't have to write down as much. This is an example of, well, what if you have no clue what to do or how to solve this problem? Well, I always start with, well, what do we know? What do we want to know? And then go from there. Now, my goal is to try to connect these two things. Well, let's just start with a simpler problem. where we just have 20 bucks and just the wings. No tax, no tip, nothing. Well, to give you an example of how this would be, well, we know on one hand we have 20 bucks, and on the other hand we have how much the wings will cost. Well, you can just imagine how you would calculate the cost if you knew how many wings you're going. I mean, you can try this with numbers. Well, say I was getting 10 wings. Well, how much would 10 wings be? Well, you take 25 cents times 10, right? And you get 2.5 or 250, right? So instead of using numbers, well, let's just put the variable in there, the thing we don't know for the number of wings. And we would get this equation, 0.25W equals 20. Now, solving just this equation, you can see, if you remember, to solve equations, you just do the same thing to both sides, do the same operation to both sides until you get the ultimate goal of getting the variable by itself. Okay, well, who we want W by itself. Who's in the way? Well, the 0.25. It's being multiplied by the W. So let's divide both sides by 0.25, 25 cents. And it basically tells you what to do, something you probably already knew how to do anyway. It's like, well, how many wings can you buy? Well, how many times does a quarter go into $20? That's basically what it is. But the equation basically told me to do that, so I didn't have to really know that beforehand. Then you can use that to build your intuition if you didn't already know this. That's fine. So 20 divided by 0.25, well, that's 20 divided by a fourth, or 80. Did I do that right? Yep. 80 wings. What I did there in my head is I had 20 divided by a fourth. That equals 4 times 20. It's 80. That's how I did that in my head. But anyway, neither here nor there. Use your calculator for that if necessary. So, okay, well, 80 wings. So just raw, no tax, no tip, no nothing, no extra stuff. It's 80 wings, okay? So now we're just going to build up this equation from here, adding all the extra bits. I'm going to add the beverage and the dressing first, and then we'll see what kind of equation we get. Well, we've got our beverage and the dressing. We'll add that in and see what that does. Well, just imagine we still have our 25-cent wings. Well, we got to add in how much beverage costs and the dressing costs, $5 plus $1.50. And that still equals the $20 that we have. Combine all that together. Notice when I do equations and I solve equations, I try to line up these equal signs as best I can, and then I can kind of do a little bit of bookkeeping and keep track of what the heck I'm doing. So anyway, $5 and $1.50, that's $6.50. Plus our calculation for 25 cents times the number of wings. Well, now we can solve this. So I simplified the left side just to combine those like terms of $5 and $1.50. Now I can solve, doing the same operation to both sides. Well, get the term with the variable by itself first. We need this term by itself first, and so let's get rid of the 650, because if we get that term by itself with the W in it, if we get that by itself, then we can divide by the 0.25 just like we did in the previous equation. So let's subtract 650, and that is going to be 1350, right? 1350. If I did that right. If I make a mistake here, feel free to say something in the comments or something. Just let me know. Wait, I'll probably have to fix it. But I'm liable to make a mistake. This is the nature of the beast here. So now we got a quarter, 1/4 times W equals 1350. Now we divide both sides by 0.25, just like we did before. I may need a calculator for this one. I could almost do this in my head, I think, but let's just do it. 13.5, it's not too bad. 13 times 4 is 40 plus 12 is 52 plus another 2, so it should be 54, but let's make sure. 54, yep. Okay, so we're good to go. The number of wings is, wings is 54. All right, so there we go. Okay, so really the same problem. It's just we effectively had $6.50 less than what we had before, and then it ends up being the same process. Well, you take off that amount up for the beverage and the dressing, and then you divide by your quarter as before, and you have obviously less wings, fewer wings to buy, or you're able to buy. All right. Well, let me do a little thing here. Scroll down a little bit. Let's do the next thing. So I may have to scroll up just to remind myself what I'm doing. We're going to add. Let's add the tip first. Let's add the tip, and then we'll add the tax, and then we'll see what we can do. Now, an important thing to note is that this tip, 20%, is not 20% of the $20. It's 20% of whatever the cost is. But the problem is we don't know beforehand. We don't know what the total cost is. But we can include that in the equation in that expression on the left side, just as if we did know it. So if we did know what the cost of the total cost with the wings and the beverage and the dressing, if we knew what that was, then you just multiply that by our multiplier. That's equivalent to a 20% increase, and then you would get your total amount that costs, including the tip. So we have the original price. The original cost is what's going to be on the left side. So we're taking 20%, or technically 120% of that left side. So let me show you what I mean by that. So next, we're just going to add the tip, our 20% tip. Well, when we're doing this, we take our previous expression, and notice you could, as I'm doing this step by step, you could just do this all in one step, all this building of the equation, and then solve the equation. You don't have to solve each individual step. We're just solving it just to get some practice and see how things work. And solving the equation gives you some intuition of what you actually would do if you were going to do something like this in your head anyway. So we got a quarter plus a 650. Then we're going to take that times 1.2. Remember, 20% increase, which is a 20% tip. Tip is adding more onto what you have, onto the original price. So that is equivalent to a multiplier of 1.2, 1.20. I could have put a 20 there, but I didn't. It's the same thing. So, and still on this side we have our $20. Now there's a couple ways you can do this to solve this problem. And it's kind of up to you to some extent. Sometimes it's easier one way than the other. One thing you can do is distribute this 1.2 through the entire thing. And you get 1.2 times 0.25 times W plus 1.2 times 650. I might as well write that. I'll just do it this way first of all, and then you'll see we'll look at other ways to do it here. There are some shortcuts we can take here. 0.25 W plus, now remember, that 1.2 is multiplied by each term on the inside. That's the distributive law. And we haven't done any operation to both sides. We're just distributing to simplify or to change, essentially simplify the left side. So now, this distribution gives us a little bit of interesting insight here. So if I take 1.2 times 0.25, we get 0.3. So we have 0.3 or 30, or 30 cents. So effectively, if you include a tip, effectively you're paying 30 cents a wing. In addition to 1.2 times 650, 7.8, 780. And so effectively, if you could almost think of the price with the 20% tip is 30 cent wings and 780 for those two, for the dressing and the beverage. As if if you weren't going to pay any tip, these would be the prices. It's equivalent to a no tip price of 30 cent wings and 780 beverage and dressing. Anyway, that's just a cool little insight to notice. And then you solve this the same way we did before. Subtract 780 or 7.8 if you like. Same thing. subtract 7.8 from both sides, and then we'll divide by 0.3 once we figure out what these numbers are. Now, technically, you could wait. You could say, well, I don't feel like digging out my calculator right this second, so let's just write 20 minus 7.8. You could do this, or you could calculate that out and get a number. The cool thing here is I can now divide both sides by 0.3. And so now this whole thing is your answer once you get your calculator out and calculate it out. So you take 20 minus, now remember order of operations, you got to take that 20 minus 7.8 first. Let me get my calculator here. It's being recalcitrant here. Well, anyway, 20 minus 7.8 is 13, 12.2, I think, 12.2. And then we'll divide that by 0.3. I have to get my other calculator out. Oh, there we go. Here we go. So 12.2 divided by 0.3. We got 40.6 repeating. 40.6 repeating. 40.6 repeating. Basically, now the question is, okay, is the answer 40 or is it 41 wings? Well, if you think about it for a bit, if you were to actually plug in the number 40 into this W up here, you would find that you would still be less than 20 bucks. You'd still have some change left over. If you plugged in 41, you would have this whole calculation here. If you plugged in 41, would end up giving you a total price that's more than 20 bucks. And so then you wouldn't actually be able to get that many wings. So 41 would take you past the amount of money you have. So it's not just as simple as rounding, because you could say, well, we'll just round it up to 41. It's like, well, it depends on the problem, whether they want you to round or not. So our final answer is going to be 40 wings with this particular situation. We still haven't done the tax yet. We got one more step to do. And this would be the equation you would do basically from the beginning. You wouldn't necessarily have to go through all those initial steps, but you would build the left side of this equation the same exact way. You'd start with your 25-cent wings, add the 650, then multiply that by 1.2, and then we're going to multiply it by another multiplier, which involves the tax. 7% tax. And so here's our equation for this. We already have our wings, 650, 1.2 for the tip, and then 1.07 for our tax. 1.07 because it's a 7% tip, or 7% tax, and it's a percent increase, so your multiplier is 1 plus that 7%, 1 plus that 0.07 or 1.07. That still equals our 20 bucks on the right side. One cool thing is if you multiply 1.07 times 1.02, or sorry, 1.2, you get 1.284, and so that's kind of a neat number to think about. 1.284 times this whole business, 1.25W plus 650 equals 20. And now that I see that number, 1.284, that basically amounts to a 28.4% increase from this original cost here. So if you imagine tax and tip calculated in this way, then that multiplication amounts to a total of 28.4% increase. So at this point, I could distribute that 1.284 like I did before, just to show you something a little different. I'll divide both sides by 1.284, but I don't know if I'm actually going to do the division, because 20 divided by 1.284 is going to be an unfun number to deal with. So let's see what let's do that. Let's just divide this whole side by 1.284 and divide this by 1.284, just to see what happens. It's going to be messy, but hey, it's not too bad. We have calculators. We're adults. We can handle this. So we now have 0.25 W times plus 650 equals whatever this number is. I guess I can calculate what it is real quick. But if you use your calculator right now to get a number, which is fine, just remember that number is 15.576 and all sorts of stuff. 576, etc., etc. Don't round this number here yet. Don't round this 15.576 to any decimals. Keep in your calculator. Keep that number. Store it in memory or do whatever, or to keep track of it. And that way you won't lose any accuracy from rounding errors. Or you could just save it as 20 divided by 1.284. Either way, and then do the calculation last. But now from here, it's the same business, 650 from each side. I'm just going to take that previous number, 15.57. It's in my calculator. I'm just going to keep that number, and I'm going to subtract 6.5, and I get 9.076, right? So 0.25W equals 9.076-ish. Again, you don't have to write these dots, but just if you write these numbers, that's cool. Just keep the actual number, the full accuracy number in your calculator. Now divide both sides by 0.25. And we will get our answer, which looks like it's 36.305, whatever, 30, sure. Again, we can't go to 37 or else we're going to go over $20 for our total cost. So our answer technically this number is the solution to this equation above, but it's not the number of wings that we can buy. So technically W is not 36, but whatever. I just say I just round it like this. You can either leave that W equals off or not, and just write 36 wings can be bought. Whatever. If you want to write a sentence to explain what this means, that's fine. I wrote what W was up above, number of wings that you can buy. So hopefully this is clear. So there's our final answer to the actual original problem. Is 36 wings. Now, like I said, you would go straight to this equation if you were solving this yourself. So that's about it for this problem. Oh, by the way, yeah, you could have done this, solved this problem here using what we did up above. You could distribute that 1.284. You could distribute that through and get those two those two numbers, and then do the same thing that we did up here. So you pick whichever method you like and do that. I think that's it for now. For this problem, I'll do another video on some tricks that we can do to solve these kinds of problems. If they have decimals or lots of fraction in it, you can clear those fractions or decimals by multiplying both sides by clever numbers. Anyway, but for now, see you next time.